Right. Magnús, I was keen to bring you into the conversation. You know, I know that you take a strong regional look at things, and you're in Iceland, but which is a super active spot to be right now in the salmon M&A landscape. But you're also very active in looking across Europe at what's going on. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I would like to second what has been said about consolidation and secondary seafood processing, especially in Europe. You look at that landscape, there are thousands of companies, and it's very fragmented, small companies. And it is not only driven by the need of the salmon farmers to get closer to the customers, which certainly is a valid reason, but it's also driven by the fact that there are a lot of technology changes taking place in secondary seafood processing. And the small companies, they have difficult time keeping up with the pace of investment needs in new technology. It's of course all going to automation, and also more and more demand from bigger and bigger customers that want more scale. So I think it is not only push from the salmon farming companies to do this, to learn more about the markets and get close to the customers, but also the need of the secondary seafood processing companies. I also would like to second what Ignacio and the other thing said about the health of the industry. It is a very, very healthy industry in spite of the depressed prices. But what that will eventually do, it will increase the places where salmon will be consumed. It's remarkable kind of to see the ability that the industry has to move from food service more into retail. Every kilo that is produced, the 2.5 million tons that is produced, every kilo is consumed today, even though it is at a lower prices than most people would like to see. But that is increasing the size of the market. I think if I look into Iceland, that has been a remarkable story. It is in relatively few years, say like five years, we've gone from nothing to something. It is still kind of like only a little less than 40,000 tons in production last year, but we are starting to see licenses of more than 100,000 tons, and people in the industry are talking about that the industry can grow to something like 200,000 tons. And I think that can be seen. If you take the market capitalization of the industry in Iceland, it is north of 1 billion euros. And that has happened so quickly and been driven by Norwegian companies that has brought both knowledge and capital. And that is, of course, the secret sauce is always to have both capital and knowledge in the same company, then things start to happen. And I see kind of like continuation of increased production. I think we still have fairly fragmented industry in Iceland, even though the 4 big companies that are all Norwegian controlled, 3 of them listed, and soon two of those will be combined, so there will be 3 listed companies. That is the lion's share of the licenses, but there are still about 10 to 15 companies in this industry, and it was announced this morning that one, you can call it boutique trout farmer, was sold to an Icelandic institutional investor or private equity fund, which is also interesting because I think there will be more Icelandic capital coming into the segment as we move on. There will be consolidation, Ignacio, so there will be fewer and larger companies. I think also there will be more of kind of like that people will share infrastructure. So that and we can see that from Norway, that there are many examples of that people have successfully shared the infrastructure. So that is another way to compete. But at the end of the day, you are competing with the global industry because the salmon has a global price and it's a commodity. This is a good trend, Ignacio, because the world needs more fish and more salmon. The demand for fish is endless. So if the land-based guys can get control of the cost and produce at a competitive cost, then that's just a fantastic news, and it will grow the market because there's no end in sight.
That's great. And actually, I wanted to take this question or present this in a slightly different way. You know, Magnús, you were talking about this deal that just happened in Iceland. How does the when these companies are approaching expansion for the first time, and you're looking at expansion of coastal farming in Iceland, how does the land-based equation come into modeling? You know, when you're running an MPV model on a coastal farming site, are you comparing with the land-based projects and kind of envisaging those scenarios?
Yeah, you have to have a long-term vision, like Ignacio has been explaining, and believe in the future if you're investing in a land-based farm. But obviously there are great prospects, and we have seen developments taking place here in Iceland for a long period of time. There have been on a small scale, but that is now scaling up, and there are talks about really, really big projects. So I think I absolutely agree with Ignacio that the future prospect lies there. That is a growth. I think we still have a long way to go to be cost competitive, and that will be the process that these companies need to go through. Yeah, I think it is a development that will take some time, but very interesting development, and will just support the industry in growing and increasing the market share with this.
Right, and I think we saw the other day that and forgive me if I don't pronounce the name correctly, but Samaji is one of the big players that, in actual fact, has been producing salmon in Iceland for quite a long time. They have land-based expertise, and do you expect there to be land-based capacity in Iceland as well as coastal farming?
If you take Sandherji as an example through the list that Ignacio gave, the 3 things that needs to be there. They definitely have the early stage capital. They definitely have the experience and the expertise of doing it. And now they are looking at a aluminium smelter that was never built. So the big plot of land and the building, and then they are looking into the feasibility of converting that into a huge land-based salmon farm, just like we have in Florida next to Ignacio. So these projects will take place, no doubt about it. It will take some time. It is like it took Tesla longer time to reach profitability than they planned initially, but when it came, it was huge. So that may very well be the story with land-based as well.
And Magnús, you talked earlier in the presentation about the potential downstream acquisitions. I mean, could this be a way that the salmon farming, you know, if you've got available capital and you're one of the major salmon farmers, and you're looking at your portfolio of projects, and you kind of, well, I could spend my money on going further downstream and getting my products like really in tune with what the retail channels want, or I could go and like spend $30 million on a land-based farm. What do you think the boardroom discussions are like right now when it comes to that type of thing?
I think many of the big ones will do both. But I think the downstream is probably what will be most visible in the coming, in the near future. It is like what we discussed earlier in this webinar. There are thousands of secondary seafood processing companies in Europe. It is a way too fragmented market. It is not efficient. These companies are struggling to keep up with technology and investing in state-of-the-art facilities. That is required by the customers. And then there is the obvious need for not only the salmon farmers, but also for the seafood companies in general to get closer to the customers. So we will see more vertical integration taking place, where you will have secondary seafood processing companies that have stayed independent, often family-owned, smallest companies, maybe with 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 million euros in turnover, few good customers, but they want to strengthen their access to capital, access to resource, and become part of a more stable value chain. And this, I think, will be the trend going forward. Right.
Any other thoughts on the future price and that aspect of the stability of supply and demand?
The price will go up. It's easy to make a bet in seafood and specifically in salmon. It's a wonderful commodity and wonderful product, and the long-term trend is so obvious. The prices will go up.
Right. And I guess, you know, supply before 2020 happened, and to bring the pandemic back into this, you know, there was rising Asian consumption, and, you know, new countries, new consumers, and a limited finite supply. You know, do we get, you know, to bring it into a kind of microeconomics perspective, do you all still think that we'll see that kind of paradigm shift of a demand, or a structural shift in demand, and accompanied by a structural shift in supply for this, you know, bigger market?
Recessions have a very important purpose in life, and that is to enlarge and create markets. So if you survive a recession, like we see that the salmon industry is surviving this one very well, then you will only gain from it, because you will see more prosperous and bigger market ahead. And that is what is happening.